Hi, my name is Arshdeep Grewal, and I'm a multicultural outreach service worker at MOSAIC, and I'll be talking about barriers faced by international students and common myths and misperceptions around sexual violence. International students may find explaining their experiences and feelings in English a challenge, and many may not feel confident in their English-speaking skills. Additionally, cultural differences make communication difficult. There is a fear of being misunderstood and judged due to cultural stigma around sex and due to their English proficiency. Due to the language and cultural barriers, international students are more likely to go to their peers for support instead of authority. In many cultures, sex is taboo, and speaking about sex to elders or any authority figure can be very uncomfortable for some international students. However, some students may not have the same peer support that they did back in their home country, and may not choose to tell any of their friends. Some students may not know what constitutes as sexual violence, and as a result, they may minimize their victimization. Many people are familiar with terms such as rape, but not as familiar with terms such as sexual assault, groping, stealthing, voyeurism, etc. International students work really hard to arrive to Canada for their studies. Many fear reporting because they're afraid that it might affect their post-graduation work permits and permanent residence applications. Some of the social challenges and barriers include racism, homophobia, transphobia, and racial profiling. In addition, international students can also face social exclusion from mainstream Canadian society, their campus community, and their own ethnic communities. Also, international students may feel like they have a lack of friends or a support network. They might also feel isolated and homesick, and might be struggling with more independency. International students might be struggling with the process of acculturation or language and cultural barriers. Upon arrival, international students might find it difficult adjusting to Canadian society or university. They may feel isolated from the larger community or from their school community due to cultural and language barriers. Many international students leave their friends and families back home, who are their primary support network. The lack of a support network can further negatively affect international students' mental health and increase their feelings of helplessness. As previously mentioned, if there are language and cultural differences and barriers, international students may choose not to disclose to someone who may not understand their culture in a fear of being judged or misunderstood. International students are also facing high tuition fees, a high cost of living, and pressure to send money back home. They also may fear harassment or sexual assault in their workplace. In addition, international students may face work exploitation from their employer, who may make them work illegal hours, not pay them for overtime, or give them lower wages. International students face many financial hardships. Despite the narrative that international students come from wealthy backgrounds, many are struggling to make ends meet financially. These students are facing higher tuition fees that are 3 to 4 times more than domestic students, while also paying for rent and other necessities, and sometimes even sending money back home. International students are also vulnerable to sexual harassment in the workplace because they fear reporting to the police or fear that they may be deported or threatened with deportation by their employer. International students are unaware and unfamiliar about services that they can access because many believe that laws or visa regulations prohibit them from accessing any support. They also may be accustomed to the legal and justice systems in their home country, and navigating a new legal system on their own can be very overwhelming. International students may face a series of legal challenges and barriers, such as unclear leave provisions around sexual assault, shorter post-graduation work permit, an increase in refusals of post-graduation work permits. As mentioned, international students may also fear deportation or police and have a general lack of knowledge of Canadian rights and laws. International students are usually seeking to become permanent residents in Canada. Therefore, they may be more reluctant to proceed with a report, investigation, or a court case because the misperception that proceedings may affect their application for their permanent residence in the future. International students may assume that they might be rendered inadmissible to seek medical service, legal aid, and financial support. International students are coming to a new country where resources and policies around sexual violence may be completely different from their home country. They may have trouble locating their options and resources as well as navigating them. In addition, they may not know that if their status as an international student grants them the same accessibility to resources as domestic students. These barriers can significantly affect the lives of international students who are survivors of sexual violence because they are figuring out a system completely on their own that is entirely new to them, and this can cause extra stress on top of academic and financial stress. However, it is important to note that there are community supports available for international students across BC. Let's look at some myths and misperceptions that international students may have around sexual violence. Myth 1. Women provoke sexual assault by how they dress or act. They're inviting sexual violence and are increasing their chances of being sexually assaulted. Let's debunk this myth. The fact is that the offender alone makes the choice to commit sexual assault. No one is ever asking for sexual violence. How someone acts or dresses is not an invitation for sexual activity against their will. Myth 2. Some victims of dating violence or sexual assault provoke violence committed by their dates by making them jealous, acting mean, or teasing them into thinking they want to have sex. Violence is never the victim or survivor's fault. There's no such thing as victim-precipitated violence. Victims and survivors are not responsible for the actions of their attackers. Only people who use violence are responsible. Myth 3. Only strangers can commit rape. They attack in dark alleys and in parks. This is a misperception, as the majority of sexual assaults are committed by someone the victim or survivor knows, such as a date, an acquaintance, partner, friends, co-worker, or their spouse. Victims or survivors are often assaulted in private residences. Myth 4. People who drink or use drugs are asking to be sexually assaulted. A person cannot consent if they are drugged, intoxicated, or unconscious. Being vulnerable isn't the same as giving consent. The perpetrator alone is responsible for their actions. Many perpetrators use alcohol and drugs to make their victims more compliant. This myth is victim blaming. Myth 5. If two people are married, living together, dating, or on a date, consent is implied. Romantic partners cannot sexually assault one another. The truth is, being in any kind of relationship does not give someone the right to force sex without consent. Sexual assault can occur in intimate partner relationships. Friendliness, flirtation, or paying for dinner are not invitations to sexual activity. Regardless of the relationship, sexual activity cannot be assumed. These were just some of the myths and misperceptions around sexual violence that some international students may be carrying. It is important for us to debunk these myths and misperceptions in order to dismantle rape culture in our society and to decrease victim blaming. If you are in immediate danger or fear for your safety, call 911. Access 24 hours, 7 days a week support from Victim Link. Reach out and speak to a worker in the violence prevention programs and access supports from MOSAIC. To ask about community resources in your area, call 211.